Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're jumping into something really fascinating, American whiskey. And this isn't just about, what's in your glass. It's a whole story packed with history, some surprising twists, and, some pretty well-kept secrets.
Absolutely.
So our mission here is to really unpack your sources, pull out those key moments, the regulations which can get complex, and even the science behind what makes American whiskey today.
That's a great way to put it, because American whiskey, especially bourbon, it isn't just a drink. It's really a product that's been shaped by these huge historical moments and also by these constant debates about quality and rules.
And how things that happened way back when still affect things now.
Exactly. Seemingly small details can have a really long shadow.
Okay, let's get into it then. So right at the beginning, looking at the moments that really built this industry. Forging the foundation. 3 defining moments in American whiskey history. Right, so trying to nail down exactly when American whiskey started. It's tricky, isn't it? It feels like there are more theories than solid facts.
Oh, definitely. The historical records from those early days, say the 1600s, are just, well, they're not great. Some say maybe 1607, some lean towards 1620.
And figuring out who actually invented bourbon or even where the name came from, forget about it. It's kind of a mystery.
It really is. Unlike, say, the meticulous records you might find in Britain for Scotch, early American production was much less documented. But thankfully, we do have some key moments, specific years, with clear records that absolutely shape things. The first big one is 1897.
1897. Bottled in bond. This is where consumer protection starts, right? And the backstory is kind of nuts.
It really is. So picture the mid-1800s. People figured out aged whiskey tastes way better than the raw stuff. Demand just shot up.
But aging takes time, years.
Exactly. And producers couldn't keep up. So you get widespread fraud. These guys called rectifiers started fixing unaged whiskey.
Yeah.
And the stuff they added. Wow.
Yeah, it's shocking. We're talking caramel, prune juice. I read even tobacco spit.
Unbelievably, yes. Tobacco spit, iodine, fruit coloring, acid, sugar, even dried bugs ground up. Seriously.
Oh, so you, the consumer, were basically just rolling the dice, buying from a barrel, hoping it wasn't poisonous.
Pretty much. There was zero transparency, zero protection. Trust was totally shot. That's where Colonel E.H. Taylor comes in. He was a distiller, a key figure.
And he pushed for this Bottled in Bond Act.
He championed it. And here's the kicker. It actually became the first consumer protection law in the whole United States. Not just for whiskey, for anything.
Wow, the first. That's huge. So whiskey led the way for protecting consumers across the board.
It did. It set this incredible precedent. It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
Okay, so what did Bottled in Bond, or BB, actually require? What were the rules?
There were 5 main things. First, it had to be aged at least 4 years. Minimum. Could be much longer. Of course, some BB stuff is aged over 25 years.
Okay, 4 years minimum.
Second, it had to be stored in a federally supervised warehouse. The government could literally show up unannounced, though that was rare.
Kept them honest. Got it.
Third, bottled at exactly 50% alcohol by volume, 100 proof. Unless it was for export, then it could be different.
100 proof.
Fourth, and this is key, produced by one distiller at one distillery, all within one single distilling season. That's either January to June or July to December.
So traceability, no blending from different times or places.
Exactly. And fifth, if it happened to be bottled somewhere other than where it was aged, they had to state that clearly on the label. Transparency again.
And BB is still around. You see it on labels today. That really speaks to its lasting power, that focus on quality.
It really does. It's a mark consumers still trust.
But then came 1920, a massive, massive blow. Prohibition.
Oh, yeah. 1920 to 1933. It was just a bloodbath for the industry. Something like 2,000 distilleries just vanished, went bankrupt.
2,000. That's staggering. And wasn't rye whiskey actually more popular than bourbon before Prohibition?
That's the surprising part most people don't realize. Yes, rye was outselling bourbon. About half the distilleries were making rye. Prohibition completely changed that landscape.
So how did bourbon survive and rye just disappear almost? Was it just luck?
Well, here's the twist. Out of those thousands of distilleries, only 10 were given permits to keep making whiskey, strictly for medicinal purposes. Only 6 actually took the offer.
Medicinal whiskey. Right.
And crucially, those 6, they only made bourbon.
Why only bourbon?
Simple economics, really. Corn was just way cheaper than rye grain. For the tiny amount they were allowed to produce, bourbon made more financial sense.
Okay. So that basically stopped rye production in its tracks.
Completely. And it cemented bourbon's dominance in the market, that imbalance. It's still true today. we sell something like 20 times more bourbon than rye, all tracing back to that Prohibition-era decision.
Wow. And Prohibition also gave us the three-tier system.
That's right. Producer, distributor, retailer. It came about after Prohibition ended as a way to control alcohol sales, prevent monopolies, collect taxes effectively.
And that system still impacts us today, right?
Yeah.
Like why prices might be higher or why shipping is complicated.
Absolutely. It means there are multiple layers, each needing to make a profit, which can push up the price for you. It's why you generally can't just order whiskey shipped directly from a distillery in another state.
Right. You have to go through your local store.
Exactly. Even if you do a cool barrel pick and buy a whole barrel, the distillery still has to bottle it and sell it through a licensed retailer in your state. It's this whole complex web stemming from trying to regulate things post-Prohibition.
Fascinating how these historical fixes stick around. Okay. Third big moment, 1964, giving bourbon its official identity.
Yeah.
By the 50s and 60s, bourbon was huge, super popular, and like popular things do, it started getting copied.
Other countries making bourbon.
Yeah, places like Mexico, Canada, they started putting bourbon on their labels, but the quality was all over the place. It wasn't necessarily made the same way.
So the U.S. producers weren't happy about that, I imagine.
Not at all. So Congress stepped in. In 1964, they passed a resolution officially declaring bourbon a distinctive product of the United States. Basically, a geographical indication like champagne or scotch.
Meaning you can only call it bourbon if it's made here, following specific rules.
Precisely. And they laid out 5 key rules. First, the mash bill, the grain mix, has to be at least 51% corn.
51% corn minimum. Can be more, but usually not over 80%, right?
Correct. Second, when it comes off the still, it can't be higher than 80% ABV or 160 proof.
Okay.
Third, when it goes into the barrel for aging, it can't be more than 62.5% ABV, 1 in 25 proof. We'll come back to that number later. It's important.
Ah, okay. Barrel entry proof. Got it. Fourth, it has to be aged in new charred oak containers, barrels basically. No minimum aging time legally, but most good bourbon is aged several years.
New, charred oak. That's critical for the flavor.
Absolutely. And fifth, the big one from the 1964 Act. It must be made in the U.S.
And this leads to that hilarious Crown Royal story, doesn't it?
No, yeah, it's a classic example of how seriously these rules are taken. So Crown Royal, which is Canadian, obviously, tried to release a product called Bourbon Mash around 2018.
Bourbon Mash from Canada.
Yeah.
How did that even get approved?
That's the thing. The TTB, the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau, they regulate this stuff. They actually approved the label initially. Huge mistake.
Oops.
Big oops. They realized it pretty quickly. Diageo, who owns Crown Royal, had a year to fix it. So what did they do? They had to slap these big stickers on the bottles already out there that literally said, in large print, "This is not bourbon whiskey."
No way. That's amazing.
Can you imagine? They eventually renamed it Blender's Mash. But yeah, those bottles, the original forbidden label, total collector's items now, shows you cannot mess with the definition of bourbon.
Absolutely. Ironclad rules. Okay, so that covers the huge historical pillars, too. The current landscape, modern regulations, and the nerd scale of quality. Let's shift gears now to the present day. We mentioned the TTB. How are they continuing to shape things? What regulations are evolving now that affect us, the drinkers?
Right. The TTB is constantly looking at things. Take bottle sizes, for instance. This was a fairly recent change, December 29th, 2020.
Yeah, change.
They expanded the list of approved bottle sizes. Before, there were only 7 standard sizes allowed in the U.S. Now there are 11. The really significant addition was the 700-milliliter bottle.
700 milliliters. Why is that important? Isn't 750 milliliters the standard?
It is in the U.S., but 700 milliliters is standard in Europe and many other parts of the world. So allowing 700 milliliters makes it much easier for American producers to export, especially to places like the EU. Some countries there, like Sweden, actually didn't allow 750 milliliter bottles.
Ah, so it opens up markets. Any impact here in the U.S.?
Potentially. It could allow producers to maybe keep a similar price point, but sell slightly less liquid, shrinkflation, basically.
Yeah.
But the main driver was definitely exports.
And isn't it weird that the U.S., which doesn't really use the metric system for much else, mandates it for liquor bottles?
It is pretty quirky, isn't it? Yeah, alcohol volume has to be in metric here. One of those odd exceptions.
So bottle sizes are set. What about barrel sizes? You mentioned new charred oak, but is there a rule about how big the barrel has to be?
Surprisingly, no, not in the U.S. Scotland has rules max 700 liters there, but here, it's kind of the Wild West. The TTB did float an idea back in 2018.
What did they propose?
They suggested standardizing barrel sizes to approximately 50 gallons, which is around 200 liters. That's pretty close to the standard 53-gallon barrel most big distilleries use anyway.
Okay, that seems reasonable. Why the controversy then?
Well, it hit the craft distillers hard. A lot of smaller producers use much smaller barrels, sometimes down to 5 or 10 gallons.
Why smaller?
Faster aging, basically. More wood contact relative to the liquid means it picks up color and flavor quicker. It helps their cash flow. They can get product out the door faster. Quality is debatable, but it speeds things up.
Ah, I see. So they didn't like the idea of being forced into larger barrels.
Not at all. Meanwhile, the big guys kind of liked it. Uniform sizes make warehousing and handling cheaper. And then you had other producers, especially in really hot places like Texas.
Like balcones.
Exactly. They actually argued for bitter barrels sometimes, like 59 gallons or even custom 132-gallon ones. They felt larger barrels matured whiskey better in intense heat, slowing down the oak extraction a bit.
So lots of different opinions. Did the proposal go anywhere?
Nope. Too much pushback from different sides. It's basically dead in the water and probably won't be revisited soon. Barrel size remains unregulated.
Okay, another thing we see a lot more of now is finished whiskey. Aged in bourbon barrels, then finished in, say, port wine casks or sherry casks. How are the rules handling that?
That's another hot topic. There's a real debate. On one side, you have people saying, look, if you finish a bourbon in a port cask, it tastes so different it shouldn't even be called bourbon anymore. Maybe whiskey specialty or something.
Because it changes the core flavor profile so much.
Exactly. They worry it might confuse consumers who expect a traditional bourbon taste. But the other side argues that, hey, consumers are smart. If the label clearly says finished in port wine barrels, people get it. And strict rules could kill innovation.
So where did the TTB land on this?
They tried to find a middle ground in 2018. The rule now is that the information about the finishing, like finished in port wine barrels, has to be in lettering at least the same size as the class type, like bourbon whiskey.
So you can't hide the finishing info in tiny print.
Right, it has to be prominent. My feeling is we might see even stricter rules around this eventually. The discussion is definitely ongoing.
Okay, now let's dive into something you hinted at earlier, something that you said really gets into the weeds, the real whiskey nerd stuff.
Yeah.
Barrel entry proof.
Yes. This is where it gets really interesting if you love the details.
So remind us, what is barrel entry proof, or BEP?
It's just the proof, the alcohol percentage of the raw whiskey when it first goes into the barrel to start aging. Remember that third rule for bourbon? Max 62.5% ABV or 125 proof.
Right, 125 proof max entry. And that limit was set back in 1962, you said. Was it always that high?
No, it used to be lower. They actually raised the limit in 1962.
Why? Why allow distillers to put stronger alcohol into the barrel?
Purely economics. Think about it. If you put higher proof whiskey into the barrel, you can fit more alcohol potential in the same space. Then when it's done aging, you add more water to bring it down to bottling proof.
Ah, so higher entry proof means more finished bottles from each barrel.
Exactly. Maybe 20 extra 750 milliliter bottles per barrel compared to using a lower entry proof. For a big distillery, that adds up. It was just seen as good business back in '62, a way to increase efficiency and yield.
Okay, makes economic sense. But what does it do to the actual whiskey? Does higher entry proof affect the flavor?
Huge impact. And this is where the science gets fascinating. There was a key study back in 1974, published in a chemistry journal, looking at this exact question.
What did they find?
They found that a higher barrel entry proof leads to lower color intensity in the final whiskey. And more importantly, fewer congeners.
Okay, congeners, those are the flavor compounds, right? But aren't some bad and some good?
Precisely. Some congeners, like fusel oils, can be harsh or unpleasant in large amounts. But others, especially chemical compounds called esters, those are goldy.
Esters, what do they do?
They create all those wonderful fruity and floral aromas and flavors we love. Strawberry, honey, vanilla, caramel, cherry, lemon, apple, the list goes on. They're a huge part of a whiskey's complexity and appeal.
So if higher entry proof reduces congeners overall, it reduces the good esters too.
That's the trade-off, yes. You lose some of that potential flavor complexity. It's a less rich starting point for flavor development in the barrel.
Okay, what else happens chemically? You mentioned phenols earlier.
Right. Oak wood contains phenols, things like tannins, that give structure, but can also taste bitter or overly spicy if they're too dominant. Now, these phenols are mostly water-soluble.
Meaning they dissolve better in water than in alcohol.
Exactly. So if you have a lower entry proof, there's more water in the spirit going into the barrel. That means more of these phenols dissolve out of the wood early on.
Which sounds bad initially, more bitterness.
Initially, maybe, but here's the magic. Over years of aging, oxidation happens in the barrel. Air gets in, and this oxidation process actually breaks down those harsher, bitter phenols, transforming them into more pleasant flavors. So starting with more phenols, thanks to lower BEP, gives the aging process more raw material to work with, ultimately leading to a more complex, less bitter profile.
Wow, okay. That's counterintuitive but makes sense.
Yeah.
Summing it up. Higher entry proof is better for yield, more bottles per barrel. But lower entry proof seems generally better for developing rich, complex flavors.
That's the general consensus among many whiskey geeks and quality-focused producers, yes. Choosing a lower BEP is often seen as a sign that a distillery is prioritizing potential flavor quality over maximizing the number of bottles they can sell. They're sacrificing yield for taste.
But it's not always the case that high BEP means lower quality whiskey, right? Can good distillers compensate?
Absolutely. It's a very important nuance. While a lower BEP gives you a potential head start on flavor, a really skilled distiller using excellent grains, maybe longer aging, specific barrel char levels, careful warehouse management, they can still make fantastic whiskey even if they enter the barrel at the maximum 125 proof.
Okay, so it's indicator but not the whole story. Can you give some examples? Who uses lower versus higher entry proofs?
Sure. Some well-known examples using lower BEP include Michter's, famously down at 103 proof, or 51.5% ABV. Maker's Mark is 110 proof, 55%. Wild Turkey uses 115 proof, 57.5%. Four Roses is 120 proof, 60%.
And who's at the maximum 125 proof or 62.5%?
Many big players operate there, like Buffalo Trace, Heaven Hill, Jack Daniels. Though technically Tennessee whiskey, the principle applies. Again, these guys make great whiskey, but they rely on other parts of their process to achieve that quality, starting from that higher proof point.
So knowing the BEP tells you something about the distiller's philosophy, maybe. Quality versus quantity focus.
It can definitely be a clue, yeah. It's one of those subtle details that signals intent. 3. A glimpse of craft. Driftless Glen Distillery.
This is fascinating stuff. Okay, let's try and tie all these threads together. The history, the TTB rules, the science like BEP with a concrete example. Let's talk about a specific distillery, Driftless Glen. How do they fit into this picture?
Driftless Glen is a great example. They're based in Baraboo, Wisconsin, so outside Kentucky, proving great bourbon can be made elsewhere in the U.S.
Right, that 1964 rule just says made in the U.S.
Exactly, and they really lean into the craft aspect. They use local Wisconsin grain, local spring water, they focus on small batch production, and notably, they choose not to cold filter their whiskey.
Non-chill filtered. Why is that significant? Linking back to what we discussed.
It connects directly back to preserving flavor compounds, those esters and other congeners we talked about. Cold filtering can strip some of those out to make the whiskey clearer, especially when chilled. By skipping that, Driftless Glen is prioritizing keeping the full flavor profile intact, even if it might get cloudy if you add ice. It's another sign of prioritizing taste.
Makes sense, and they've gotten some recognition for this approach.
They have. They've won quite a few awards, built a solid reputation among people who appreciate craft spirits.
So what kind of whiskeys are they putting out that reflect these principles?
Well, they have some excellent single-barrel cask strength bourbons. These really showcase the raw character. They release them at different proofs, reflecting the natural variation from barrel to barrel, say 58%, 60.5%, 61.5% ABV.
And these are aged properly.
Oh, yeah. Minimum 5 years in new American oak, hitting all those bourbon requirements and going well beyond the non-existent legal minimum for aging. The 61.5% one, for example, people describe it as having, velvety caramel, vanilla, nutty notes, dark chocolate, spicy oak. Really complex stuff.
Sounds delicious. Do they do rye as well?
They do. They have a single-barrel cask strength straight rye, also aged at least 5 years, usually around 60% ABV. Think spicy rye grain notes. Oak, caramel, pepper, toffee, classic rye profile, but with their own stamp.
And besides the cask strength stuff?
They also do small batch versions of their straight rye and straight bourbon, bottled at a more approachable 48 per 8 ABV, still aged a minimum of 4 years, so they offer different expressions.
So Driftless Glen seems like a perfect example of a modern craft distillery working within those historical rules, using the science, making deliberate choices like non-chill filtering, and really focusing on small batch, high-quality production.
Precisely. They illustrate how distillers navigate all these factors, tradition, regulation, science, and their own philosophy to create something unique. Outro.
Man, it really is amazing when you pull back the curtain. You think of American whiskey as, just a drink. but it's tangled up with centuries of history, crazy stories like the rectifiers, meticulous rules from the TTB, and this fascinating science behind flavor.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding all these layers, it definitely makes you appreciate what's in your glass a whole lot more, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It adds so much depth to the experience. So maybe the next time you pour a glass of American whiskey, take a second. Think about the choices the people who made it faced.
Yeah, like what barrel entry proof did they likely use? Did they finish it in a different cask? Why?
Exactly. What does that tell you about their priorities? Tradition, innovation, yield, taste? It's a whole story in the bottle. What new questions will you ask yourself about your next pour?